Hey, I'm Lack and Logic. Welcome to my channel. Today's going to be a bit different than what I'm kind of usually doing, but it's nonetheless a progression in my channel that I hope to develop. Uh, but the video itself is going to be a introduction to big black holes and the Big Bang. And again, it'll show the natural duality in these types of uh, in these types of developments in well space. Um, I got three planes here that represent the top one will represent as our own because it's the one we perceive, and then the other ones would just be parallel universes. The orange are your big bangs, and the green are your black holes, respectively. So when a big bang, what is a big bang? Well, it's a explosion of matter and debris and that flows through. So you got a big bang here. It's going to ripple outwards, right? And when a big bang happens, it doesn't matter what's in the way. It could possibly get hit. The Sumerians talked about um, in their idea, at least the representations of Zecharia Sitchin, uh, there used to be something in the sky that changed the world dramatically. And in the understandings of Zecharia Sitchin, the world used to be a bigger planet. Our Earth used to be a bigger planet. It used to be a water planet called Nibiru, or at least majority of water, Nibiru. Now, I want to reference the idea of Zecharia Sitchin's work just to kind of give a premise on what I'm talking about, because there's really not much that comes from um, this type of work or this type of understanding. So I don't want to say like Zecharia Sitchin's right or whatever, blah blah blah. I don't care. I care about what little information he might have gotten right. If I can place whatever information into my development, then it's going to strengthen my understanding. Even if his books are bullshit, even if whatever, because the Sumerians were real people. The Sumerians had a religion. The Sumerians had texts. So it's something to go off of. In those times, um, they did have a picture that goes around a lot that's based on there being 12 planets in a sense. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a that there's 12 planets in the solar system. Sure, there are several planets in our solar system, but to represent it as a because it looks different compared to what they were talking about. Like a bigger planet can come from, or a bigger masses can come from a big bang if it's blown out far enough and hits another solar system. Whatever's in its way can and will be either destroyed, become a part of it, or mix, kind of mix things up. And the idea of Nibiru being a bigger planet and it was hit by a larger planet could very well explain how it was. A big bang happened and hurled fucking. A big bang happened and it happened close because like I got the diagram here that represents that big bangs and black holes can be represented on either or of the plane. Like it doesn't just mean black holes go down and big bangs come up type of thing. You know what I mean? Like they alternate. You can have a big bang here and a black hole here, a big bang here and a black hole here. Like there's a vice versa there. And so when it's hurling, when the Big Bang hurling material, it could very well disrupt other planets, even if that planet houses life. Now, when Nibiru got hit, it got hit with something massive, and it took large chunks out of the planet. And I think that the planet itself, our planet now, Earth, with the moon, got set like it when it got hit, it got pushed to like it was small enough to be pushed right in between Venus and Mars, right? And the Venus and Mars's gravitational center helps build the planet in between it. Right? That's what keeps it round, and well, at least roundish. The moon is just a chunk of what we used to be. Same thing with the asteroid belt, or the like we have an asteroid belt in the solar system that is filled with fragments of a body, and a lot of it's water. So that could very well be a impact debris from our original planet. I don't want to fall too deep into that understanding, but I do think it's a good reference to understand that how the Big Bang intermingles with, like, if we have a Big Bang on our planet or on our plane, then it will very much intermingle with the planets or solar systems in this plane, whether it's crashing into them or developing new, like adding to type of thing. And a black hole is, of course, going to be the opposite. So when a black hole is made, it's almost like a rock flowing in a river, and the rock will flow and it can be pushed along by the water until it finds a little niche, a little hole that the water just allows it to not move anymore, and it actually just goes over it, right? So you can have a tumbling rock till it finds a spot, and then the water will go over it. Well, that's kind of the same premise of a black hole, except for once something finds its niche, it can create a more dense opportunity. So more matter will end up collecting there because now you have in a sense, a dip in the plane that kind of collects any loose debris that happens to fall in. And the black hole itself is a consumer. It consumes. And when the black hole goes, starts progressing more and more, it just means that the matter it's accumulating is becoming more vast. It's collecting a lot more, and it'll get to this point right here. That line in the middle is what I call density 0, 0. And when that happens is because if you're looking on a graph of a plane, your starting point is going to be 0, 0, right? There's no length, there's no width. You start at 0, 0. And that's kind of the theory behind this, is that the density gets so strong and so heavy that it gets to a point where it's literally a hot molting mass of matter, pressure, and stuff and it'll build. So 0.00 is the point where the consuming is just about to burst into a big bang. I'm going to take an idea on this, or take a reference to this um, symbol here. This is just a side view of, like, right here, uh, in our plane, because our planes are, in a sense, never ending. And you can represent the plane as, in a sense, a body, because I know the body is material, but in a sense, this is the body of the universe. This is what houses the matter, right? So when you have, like, you have multiple, I have this one, I have 3 planes, and this one I got 4. I kind of wanted to give it a little more meat. So you could see there's different points in the um, in our planes where a big bang or a black hole, or a big bang and a black hole, represent respectively. And it kind of, if you were to go down the line, keep going, you would see hundreds of thousands of connections between different planes. Now, the odd part is this bottom plane necessarily does not benefit this top plane, right? Because the planes have to interact with each other based on one level up or one level down. Now, that's not saying that information can't come from the top and go to the bottom, or vice versa, but it has to go through other planes to do so. Like here, it started out at the bottom into the second plane, and it makes its way to the third plane, right? That experience has to happen before a big bang happens again. So that would reference this one started off as a big bang in a black hole before this one did, because this one is now got new experience to, well, at least new material to work with. So it's, in a sense, you can kind of look at it, if you were to go, I don't know, 1 billion feet, and you just looked at the side view of your planes, it would be similar to almost a DNA strand, right? You would get multiple connection points between 2 planes. And these are just the building blocks. These are just like the body. I reference the body because, in a sense, these would be considered our ancestors, plane wise. If you want to take it up towards like, you're putting in the scale of the universe rather than the scale of the planet and yourself. You're scaling your understanding to the universe. So the top plane could be the experience that's, let's say, like, nickel and iron are very popular. The middle plane is, we'll say, just copper, and like we'll represent the idea, like, that it is very improbable, but the idea of nickel and iron being just here and copper being just here will help reference the idea of how this stuff intermingles with each other. And it kind of it's like, in a sense, your generation supplying you with a little bit to benefit you in the future, right? So if you got this one, it's got nickel and iron, and this one's copper, the black hole and a big bang happen. So if a black hole, big bang happened between these two, now the nickel and iron will be found in the middle plane, as well as copper will be found. But, like, now all 2 planes, both these planes would have copper and iron in it, copper, iron, and nickel. You know what I mean? Because now this plane shared with this plane what its environment was handed to, right? So it's kind of like I guess, in a sense, like a DNA, because it represents uh, the first plane being able to adapt the second plane into almost a shared experience. Just like your grandfather is similar to you, even though it's a generational skip type of thing. You know what I mean? I know that might sound a little confusing, but this is all kind of a process without trying to use much mathematics or too much science, because I believe a lot of this stuff is meant for the common folk, the people that don't need numbers and science to live life, but would like to have an understanding on how things worked. And when you get an understanding of how things work, it becomes like, this information isn't mine. This is not my intelligence. I'm trying to use my intelligence to represent it to you, right? And of course, my intelligence isn't that strong, but my capabilities to represent it are somewhat mediocre, because a lot of people represent like mathematics and science and physics to be numbers and scenarios and equations and stuff like that. That can be very hard to understand. And in a sense, it tends to confuse the majority rather than benefit them intellectually. And that's kind of what my representation is I don't like to use mathematics. I would like to explain it how I can explain it. And like I said, this information isn't mine. It's in the consciousness, right? I just use my conscious self to tap into the consciousness, which gave me this information. I'm not saying that it's wholeheartedly 100% correct, because like I said, I have to be able to use my intelligence to interpret it to you. And if my intelligence isn't strong enough, then the interpretation can be faulty, right? But the normal Joe can get a benefit from understanding common sense, right? And the consciousness is the understanding of all, right? Through philosophy, you understand the self. And if you understand the self, you understand the whole. So becoming awakened is tapping into the consciousness, because you're giving up your ideas of what you think you are, getting rid of your ego, and trying to understand who you are as a whole, which represents your species isn't that special. Humans aren't that special. We're just a part of the system, except for what we're doing to try to control it ourselves, which is the hiccup that we have, right? So the information is there. It's in the consciousness. And I wholeheartedly believe that, because if myself is the whole, then the whole has experienced this stuff already, right? That means the information's already there. If I'm tapped into the consciousness and I'm a new, like, say I'm a new being on the planet, right? And I'm tapped into the consciousness. Well, if I'm tapped into the consciousness, I have a better ability to understand how to navigate the world, whether that's hunting, scavenging, picking berries, whatever. Like, the knowledge that I get from past lives, my ancestors, is going to benefit me if I'm need to navigate the natural world. So I will understand, hey, if you watch a wolf hunt, it'll give you the better understanding on what to hunt, how to hunt, and how not to overhunt. If you watch bears, you can watch bears eat fish or berries off a bush. Like, okay, well, it stays away from this bush, but it eats this bush. Why? Well, I would assume that this bush is not edible, but this, right? So like, you're learning from nature. You learn from nature. You see animals, they go to a stream, they drink upstream rather than downstream. Why? It's because the fresher water is upstream. It's like the understanding of something that's there is, to understand that something is there, like the consciousness, is you have to let go of your idea of what humanity is and our understanding of the world, because you're not getting anything. And like I said, a lot of this stuff could be very choppy for me because we live in a world that doesn't emphasize this stuff. Um, but yeah, I would like to talk too about the design of this a side view of here. The understanding of this here is, well, it's the infinity symbol, right? If this is a duality in nature as you see it respectively, and it creates an infinity symbol. An infinity symbol is a symbol that's been around for forever, that represents the destructive and active current, right? And that's what a big bang in a black hole is. Black hole is a destructive current, big bang is an active current, right? Just like the earth and the sun, you need both to experience life. And on a scale like this would benefit our plane of existence, because it will, in a sense, it recycles stuff from one plane to another, right? And it just be like, oh, well, this plane is only going to have like copper or something. It's like, no, because there's definitely another plane under that one that would definitely feed something into this one. This one feeds into this one feeds into this one, and vice versa. But the idea of this here is a good representation of the toroidal sphere, something that it's consumed but can come anew out of something, right? So a best example for me to understand the toroidal sphere is the planet itself, our planet. Inside the middle, it's got a core that is pressurized. It is kind of similar to a black hole, right? But on a smaller scale. But um, the Earth has a middle mass of nickel, iron, whatever. It's super fucking hot. Anything that will touch it it's purified. It's a recycling center, and that when the pressure inside the earth gets too great, it has to expel itself, which would be volcanoes that develop new land. And they very much do. So, like, in my sense, that's the earth itself is the fourth dimension. The perspective of the earth is the fourth dimension, because it consumes what it produces to expel something new, right? So it's never a complete destructive system. And the toroidal sphere is something that's kind of, it's just a side view. You wouldn't think that having that type of understanding would give you leeway into the world, but in a sense, it I'm talking about toroidal sphere as the earth. It represents religion in my eyes. If you were to take away the story of religion, you are explaining how the earth is a recycling process. You're explaining how the sun gives us light, gives us energy, right? And a lot of it's like electromagnetic, right? Because that's kind of how when the black hole gets to the point of density 0, it will definitely attract the opposite or the opposing plane, kind of like electromagnetism. But that density is constantly moving to point 0. So when it hits the point 0, the connection from the opposing plane is attracted to it, and then big bang. But that I honestly believe like that's a good understanding of the fourth dimension. The first dimension is going to be a seed, right? In the dirt. That seed doesn't necessarily move, right? But it's sitting on a linear plane, and it's just sitting in the dirt. But it doesn't mean that it's not experiencing something, because once the roots start, then the experience has begun, right? But the plant can't necessarily move. I know some plants can, but they can only move through like transferring pods, transferring pollen, transferring, it can only benefit through an outside occurrence to help it reproduce. So your plant is going to represent the first dimension, or the seed of the plant is going to represent the first dimension. Well, once that plant starts to poke up from the dirt, that's going to be considered the second dimension, because the second dimension is you're observing the outside world, but you can't move in it, right? So the plant, if you were to give the plant eyes and it comes up from the ground, from the first dimension, then it starts to look around. It can't move, but it can understand its environment based on where it's at, right? And that could give an idea like, oh, well, maybe hypothetically, a plant can hold its reproduction sac or whatever helps reproduce its seeds. Like if it understands wind flow, right? Because it understands its environment, it could very well pick a position where hey, I think my plants would do a lot better on that side than that side, because there's more shade here and more water over here type of thing. So it could hold itself in a certain way where its seeds can be, and that's hypothetical, but you can't take out the understanding of an experience of a plant just because we're the only ones who experience awareness. So that's the second dimension, where the plant can observe its surroundings, but it can't move amongst it. The third dimension comes from an outside, like a species of the third dimension, a frog, a goat, a fox, a cow. These are species of the fourth dimension, bugs, or the third dimension. And the third dimension is you could be able to walk amongst your environment, right? You're not secluded to one spot like plants are. So the dimensions are important to understand the movement of species because it not only represents the species, but it also represents the consciousness that goes into each dimension, right? So you get one dimension where it doesn't do anything besides wait. Second dimension, it can experience its surroundings. Third dimension, it can move around its surroundings. And then the fourth dimension would have to be outside of what the third dimension's already doing, which would be taking the representation of the earth, consuming itself to replenish itself, right? I haven't gotten to the fifth dimension because I don't think it's necessary that at that point, but the fifth dimension could very well be this scenario here through a scale of just a massive scale of our universe, to be able to represent how it replenishes based on our plane, right? So the fourth dimension, at least the fourth dimension, where I could understand, is it's a progression of, it doesn't have to move, but everything inside of it moves amongst the first three dimensions, right? So the fourth dimension is taking the perspective of the planet into consideration. Let's see. So I talked about black holes, talked about big bangs. Like these things aren't necessarily special, but they are important. The reason why they're not special is because they will happen all the time. We can't control that. But like kind of wanted to represent. I was kind of excited to make this video because this is kind of something I've been like trying to put together myself for a while, and trying to get it to where it's not like I don't like mathematics. I'm not very good at it, and it's kind of what represents my intelligence. Like, I don't see myself as a super intelligent person, but I have the capabilities of writing this stuff down in a perspective that can be understandable to people. But like I said, the information isn't mine. It comes from the consciousness, and we all have the capabilities of tapping into the consciousness. Therefore, all of us have the capabilities of understanding this stuff. It's whether you choose to, because at the end of the day, not everybody can be awakened. Not everybody can be stupid. Not everybody can be smart. Not everybody can be rich. Not everybody can be poor. Like, we all take our little niches we take our niches, and well, we can build egos around that, but that's not the point, because you should always be fluid in the sense of understanding. You should always be up for understanding something new. Even in my work, I would love it if people were to destroy my work to give me a better understanding of what I'm thinking of, because that's what I'm searching for, is the truth. I'm not searching for a neener answer or writing a book to tell you that this is how shit is. No, my objective is to kind of click your light bulb on so that you can think about this shit. And it's not going to be everybody. It's like this: if you don't like this video, that's fine. The video's not for you, but there might be people out there that might get some benefit from this type of video, and that's kind of the point. But Einstein talked about the planes, right? That's how he was kind of trying to represent how the Earth sits in a plane, and it's kind of convexed in a sense. And it's like, that's just saying that the planet, when it's sitting there, it doesn't just fall out of space, right? So it's, in a sense, sitting on something. Even if it wasn't connected to the sun, our planet wouldn't just fall out of space. Sure, it might drift away, but it's not necessarily going to be a falling out. So there's something there that's holding the shit together. And gravity comes from the Earth in general, right? There's no gravity in space because it's the ether. It's everything besides matter. That's another thing too with black holes. Black hole does not absorb space. It doesn't absorb the ether. It absorbs matter. It absorbs matter, gases, whatever comes from the material world. That's the only thing that gets consumed by the black hole, is organic material. And there's like an understanding too with the society that we build, because we don't like to understand the destructive current. That's why we mistrust a lot of nature, and like this stuff too is not outside the laws of nature. It very much isn't. It's wholeheartedly if the world is a recycling center, the universe is a recycling center, and it recycles just endlessly. You can't take away a plane to add a plane. Just like you can't take away a sun to add a sun, type of stuff. You can't take away. So saying that the destructive current is something to avoid is going to cause more damage than good. But like our representation of even the Earth, and I've talked about it before, because we mistrust Earth and Mother Nature, because she takes away. Humanity now does not like having things taken away. And that's a big problem. You need to accept the fact that shit can go wrong. You can lose everything. And then living your life around the idea that everything can get taken away from you is just going to make you depressed. And you're never going to advance farther as a human. Because the only thing you're going to be doing is looking for different ways to try to prevent the destruction, right? Whether that's medicine, whether that's whether that's education, whether that's, you know, like, I wanted to kind of represent this idea with Newton. Like, I don't understand why we take Newton's understanding so, like, we just put the metal to the fucking pedal and go with it, and we don't realize the kind of, like, psychological problems this guy had. Like, he was inbred, right? And that's where a lot of main information comes from in these huge societies, at least like what we call it medieval times, but like back in the monarchy times when you had a king versus its subjects, that king was usually a fucking type of guy, and he was an inbred. And I've talked about it before that these are just the elites that hold on to the information because they're scared to lose shit. They hold on to the information, and that's their flow of consciousness. There's a provided consciousness, and then there's a natural consciousness. The provided consciousness is to tell you that what humans understand is that's it. That's what we know. And that's how we should live every fucking life based on what we know from humans. But we don't understand that these words or shit like that come from people that were genetically inferior, I would say. And not in a sense like, oh, Aryan or Black Lives type of shit. Nope. I'm talking about legitimate problems like big fucking nose, fucking all, because they're inbred, right? So what do you think's going on in their brain, right? But yet it would be like, oh yeah, okay, so this makes sense because he said it. I don't believe that. I don't think that should be a way of humanity's our advancements should go, right? So like, I'm not saying what Newton's saying is wrong, but that's kind of the idea based behind what science is. It explains what the world is doing, and if you have to if you have to think about what the world is doing, then you're mistrusting it. And that's kind of like why I don't like using mathematics and stuff, because I would like to give a representation of how the world works in a sense to stop having to write shit down, right? Get people on board to understand how the universe operates. Then you no longer need textbooks and stuff like that because people will already be tapped into the information. At least a lot. I mean, like I said, not everybody can. At least I don't know. Like, we don't go this far, so it's hard to determine. It's like you can't build a utopia with mathematics. You can't. And utopias don't crumble because mathematics is not taught, right? That was kind of just a little rant on the end here. But like, that's all I got. I probably more than likely will talk about stuff like this again because I like it. I do like the idea of physics, and physics is just understanding the physical world of the thing. You know, I'm kind of trying to wrap our attention around consciousness to kind of because we don't really know much about consciousness. It's kind of just ignored, and I think that's a big problem with physics and quantum physics and experimental physics. We don't take into consideration that consciousness could house the information from the past. Like, if it worked, it's probably there, right? Because it's all probable. Like, you like, oh well, I don't trust it because I don't see it type thing. So you're gonna make a hypothesis, an experiment. Oh, I guess it does work. And then you're just like, well, what'd you do the experiment for? Type of thing. It was like, you didn't trust it, so you had to do an experiment to show that it did work that way. And then you're like, I'm a genius. Like, I don't get that as being intelligent in my eyes. Because you're like, the information is there. And people will be like, well, you were writing all this stuff down to kind of represent your understanding. It's like, yeah, but this is, like I said, is I'm not trying to put an experiment on it. I'm not trying to put, I'm not, I'm trying to allow you to understand this representation so that you can follow the consciousness, so that you can. I'm not trying to profit off this. I'm not trying to make a book. I'm not trying to, nothing. I don't want anything. I just want to talk about it. That's all I want to do. I want to create a perspective that can kind of help people get beyond the ego, the human, the idea that humans are the apex or the most important in this planet, because we're not. And consciousness will help that, because we, like I said, physics and stuff, like, they don't really take into consideration the consciousness, and that the information being there is very well important. It starts with giving up what we think is true, right? Give up the idea of what we know as facts. Not stating that, like, the sun or the sky won't be blue tomorrow. Sure, you can make a fact that the sky can always be blue, but 200,000 years from now, the sky may not be blue. We may not even have water, that's a hypothetical question, or a hypothetical reasoning, but you got to take that stuff into consideration. Time for humans is very minuscule, but time for a planet is, we can't even comprehend, right? So the planet can do whatever the fuck it wants and ask us for nothing. Anyway, that's all I got. I could make videos on this stuff again. I just kind of, I don't know, just like ranting. But I'll see you later.